All right, so we are in Luke 11 today. And in Luke 11, coming up on this episode, we are going to see what the Lord's Prayer is like. This is something that has been used over and over and over and over again, repetition in which sometimes we just don't even hear it or listen to it anymore. But let's just break it down a little bit and see what that means to us. How can we, as people who believe and who love the Lord, um, be more mindful of the way in which we speak to the Lord of all things. So I want you to stick with me, and I will see you guys in the next minute. Hey, welcome to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter, and this channel is here to kind of merge Bible living with Bible literacy. So, we are going to be using the New Testament this year in order to understand what it's like to live as a follower of Christ. I have a link below in the description that I have a download that will bring you to a chronological Bible reading of the New Testament. So, what I want you to do is read every day and join me and hopefully some friends as we talk about what it means to live as a kingdom builder. Let's get started. Hey, and welcome. So we're in Luke 10. And for those of you who have been following along, I just wanted to note that I am so far behind in the reading plan. I mean, so far behind is a little exaggerating, but I'm like a solid 3 chapters behind where I'm supposed to be by this date. And so, but I just want to mine through the information that's in there. So I will catch up. I'm just going to be adding videos in just a little bit more each day instead of being just Tuesday, Friday. So I'm just going to be having extra videos because a lot of these videos are winding up taking 2 videos because I don't want them to go too long. So I'm hoping that you guys are staying and you're listening and you're still reading along, but maybe you can just read those chapters extra times until we get to that section. I hope that you're not waiting too long for it. Okay, so today we are in Luke 10. Sorry, we're in Luke 11. And so we're coming to the Lord's Prayer. And for anything like very brief historically, we see that Jesus is kind of in the heart of his ministry, right? He's been doing massive healings. He's been doing miracles, right? Because he fed the 5,000. There are so many other things that he has done. And in all of those things, he also did a lot of teaching. So he would do these miracles, wow everybody, which not like he's a magician, but like wow everybody. So then everyone, wow, ooh, maybe this guy really is the one that was sent. And then he would do this teaching about compassion and about love and about what the law means and about what it doesn't mean. And right, so he would encompass so many things in his teachings. It wasn't just like, oh, be nice to people around you, right? Like it was so much more in depth than that. And then he started sending people further out, right? So he was encompassing this little tiny space in Israel, and then he kind of shot people all over and said, I'm coming now into that area, and so let them know. And then, so in other words too, he was like training his people to be leaders, teachers, to give up, right? To submit, to do all of these things because they love the Lord, right? And he's saying, follow me. I'm not alone. Like it makes me even think about going back with like Elijah and Elisha. There was such a long time where Elijah was alone, and that was heartbreaking for him, right? It was sad and scary and devastating. And then at one point the Lord was like, you're not alone. There are people with you. And then he had Elisha come up, and Elisha was kind of like training under him. And so this is what the Lord is. The Lord is not alone. He has all of these people with him. And then as these people come out and they start to follow him, he sends all of them out. Now, at one point, he sent them out and they all come in for this teaching. And so then they say to him today, where we start today, and they're like, Lord, teach us how to pray. John taught his disciples how to pray, and we want you to teach us how to pray. Now, for me, this was really fascinating because they prayed all the time in the Old Testament. Because I thought to myself, maybe they just don't pray. Maybe it was only the priests that prayed. Maybe it was only the high priests that would go into the temple to pray. Maybe it was only the Levites that prayed, but we don't really see that. We really see a lot of prayer. The kings were praying, the prophets were praying. It seems the people were praying. So in some Psalms, we see David praying. So there are so many people that were praying in the Old Testament. It wasn't really just limited to one thing. And like as a nation, they would be praying. And so I was just curious, like, why would they be so confused in prayer? Because what they were doing in prayer is similar to actually what Jesus has them do here. So we don't see a whole lot of differences. So some of the things he does, he says, when you pray, Father, he said, when you pray, say this, Father, hallowed be your name. So holy, right? Like hallowed is holy. Holy is your name. So he's lifting him up in praise, right? Like in worship and in praise, which again are these things that we're supposed to be doing. Lifting the Lord up, which is so funny because I know I've been around people who are like, doesn't he know that he did all these things? Yeah, he knows he did all these things. It's not for him, right? Like he's not like, holy is your name. And the Lord is like, yeah. Thanks for reminding me that my name is holy. He's the prayer is reminding himself that the Lord is holy, right? And he's letting the Lord know that he recognizes the holiness. He's submitting to the holiness of the Lord. So, right, like, Lord, you are this hallowed, holy being, right? So your name, everything that is about you, your banner, your heading, your state of being is holy. And then he says, your kingdom comes. So he's inviting the plan that God has in play for us. He's inviting that here. And then he says right after this, so there's a longer Lord's Prayer. This is not it. This is just the version that Luke is giving. And so he says, give us our daily bread, forgive us our sins as we forgive sins, right? Not as we, maybe let me rephrase that. Forgive us our sins because it says we forgive everyone who is indebted to us. So they're asking for forgiveness. Jesus is telling them, ask for forgiveness because you forgive. So there is a job that is required for those who follow Jesus. Forgiveness is a huge requirement. And he's like, we do it, right? We openly forgive. We love our community. We embrace even when someone does something wrong for us. So forgive us because we do that as well. And then it says, lead us not into temptation. And in the Old Testament, some of the things I was looking for, like, what did they pray for in the Old Testament? And they did prayers of thanksgiving, right? Thank you for the things. Prayers of praise. Lord, you are almighty. You are good, right? So all of those prayers. And he's doing the same thing. Lord, you're hallow. And then he said, praying for requests, like ask for these things. If you want these things, ask for these things. One of the kings asked for healing. He was like, I don't want to die. And so he asked for healing. There was a leper that asked for healing. So making your requests known to the Lord. And that's what he's saying. He's like, give me, Lord, give me my daily bread. That's what you're supposed to ask for. So you are supposed to be honoring the Lord in worship, right? Like lifting him up in praise, recognizing who he is and what he's done. And then you're supposed to be asking for things. And then you seek forgiveness because you have given. So even in that prayer, there's this little bit of like reminder, like you need to forgive other people. That is part of your deal. I hate to say it that way, part of your covenant, right? Like your end of the bargain, which again is something I kind of hate to say, but in here, it's like, because I forgive, we also forgive everyone who is indebted to me. And if you're indebted to me, that's not necessarily a financial debt, right? Although that's a huge thing as well. And in the Old Testament, a financial debt was supposed to be forgiven after a certain amount of time so they could come in your house. So they had this huge financial debt, and then they would come into your house and they would be slaves for a while, right? So that you would have them doing all the work in your house until that seventh year. And in that seventh year, they were forgiven their debts and they were sent back completely debt free. So you had to completely forgive them of their debts. And this is another thing where, like, yes, this is written in stone as the law, but people were abusing this in certain ways, right? Like whether it be the debtor or the deadee, they were abusing it, and they were only finding that like minutia letter of the law instead of recognizing, you know what? We are free and clear of it. And I give to you knowing that there will be a point that you will not be able to pay me back, and you will still be free and clear of the debt that you owe me. And so it could be for pain and suffering, and it could be for financial debt. It could be for hurting your feelings, right? There are so many things that, like, they don't deserve it, but you have forgiven that debt that they are unable to pay. It's easy if they're able to pay it. It's not really a forgiven debt if they're able to pay that debt, which I think we get confused in a little bit of ways, because, you know, we go, well, of course you forgive them when they come and they say that they're sorry. You always say you're forgiven. But quite often the idea is, even if they don't seek forgiveness, right? Even if they don't come and try and pay their debt to you and say, I've taken from you and now I want to make you whole, right? Whatever way that might be. They might not come and do that. And yet we're still required to forgive, recognizing that the Lord is right there to forgive all the debts that we are unable to pay him. And so this is the way that Jesus tells them to pray. And so now we move on to like the whole point and purpose of prayer, right? Like maybe not the whole point and purpose, how we are supposed to pray, right? So he gives this parable about a persistent friend. And he says, this person's like knocking on their neighbor's door. Please let me, give me something, give me something, give me gifts. And the person is like, leave me alone. I'm tired. Leave me alone. But you keep knocking, right? And even like if there's going to be a point where that person goes, fine, I will just give it to you. I'm just going to give it to you so you go away and you leave me alone. Not that God would take that. I don't think he would take that posture with us. But the idea is for us to stay persistent in our prayers, right? To continue asking him, asking because the Lord wants to give you what is good for you. He loves you and he wants to give you things. He wants you to ask him for things that he can provide those things for you. In some ways, even just communicating with you that he is who he says he is. He is real and he hears you. So you just keep asking for that thing in which you want it, because then it comes down and he says, so I say to you, so we go down to this another parable in verse 9, I say to you, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find it. So we have a job of asking, kicking back on our whatever it is, right? Or like I can get it on my own, or I'm fine, or I don't even need it that badly, or maybe that's not something I deserve, whatever it might. He's saying we have it's required of us to go and ask. It's required of us to says it says to knock and the door will be open, to seek. So we have to look, we have to ask, we have to knock. And it says and he who knocks, it will be opened, because he's a good father. He wants to give to you. He delights in his children. And just like getting out of these Christian words, right? Just saying to you, like, he made us. So if all you can think of is the fact that you have, and obviously the easiest way to do this, and this is why I say marriage and family is, and I'm not saying if you don't have a marriage or a family that you are not accepted and loved and adored by the Lord, but marriage and family is like a visual representation on earth of supernaturally what our relationship with the Lord is supposed to look like. Because those of us that have kids, who have had the blessing of being able to have kids, like my kid asks for stuff that I know isn't good for him, and I want to give it to him because I love him, or her, because I have both. Because I love my kids and I want to give, I want to see the joy on their face, the excitement, the light in their eyes when they get something that they really, really wanted. So he's not holding out on you and trying to punish you. He loves you and wants to give to you. He also wants you, just like, so again, using the expression of a kid, or if you've been a teacher, right? Like looking at your students. I know there's a lot of those out there. Again, working in the school system, right? There's so many people that teach other people, even if it's not like literally in a school system, right? What do you want from your pupil? You want your pupil to grow, right? And to start asking for things. Like when I go out and I help out with Bible studies, I don't want to just be the one always just regurgitating information. I want them to ask questions so then I can assist in their teaching. I know what they're thinking, right? So there's like this desire that they don't just sit there with their ears and go, please just keep telling me stuff and I'm just going to keep sitting here. I want them invested as much in it as I'm invested in it. And this is a good God. God knows what it takes for us to mature and to grow. And that means we are required to be a part of the system in which he's in, but he wants to give to you. Never think, if you've seen any of these like movies from probably like the 80s and 90s, never think he's that bad genie. Like, you ask a genie for something and you say, oh, I want a camel. And they take a camel from somebody that's using it to feed their family and they tear it from them and give it to you, right? Like it's a bad gift. You've hurt somebody else in order to get that gift, or something like that. That's just it. Anyway, that's just one of the ideas. But something like that, that's not the way in which he gives gifts. So if you think like, well, I want to ask for that, but I don't want, I don't want to get it and it to be horrible for me, or I don't want it to hurt somebody else in the way of me getting it. That's not the kind of father that you have. If that's not the kind of parent you would be, that's not the kind of teacher, helper, lover of other people that you would be. And that's certainly not the kind of God that we have. We have a God that wants and loves and wants to deal with us justly and rightly and being out for his good. So that's it for today. We've gotten through half of Luke 11. So that is it for today. If this has been a blessing to you, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel and keep reading. In the meantime, stick with Luke 11, and I will see you guys next time.